Hello, this is Father Bill Watson, and this is a question for our YouTube channel, Ask Father Bill. We've been looking at the issue of discernment. Let's take a look at the issue of discernment from that classic mystical phase of the dark night of the senses. In St. Ignatius's autobiography, the period from August of 1522 until February of 1523 is distinguished by discoveries linked to his awakening conscience. He's enlightened by graced attentiveness to understand the difference between good and evil as they manifest in his thoughts, his words, and his deeds. He learns to embrace those spontaneities from God and reject those from the enemy of human nature. From this point forward, Ignatius plunges into a deep confrontation with the roots of his disordered life, which over time fully awakens him to the divine light within himself. On his journey from Loyola to Montserrat, Ignatius recounts an experience that marks the important second event of his progressive conversion. It's what I call the truth paradigm, and it unfolds a temptation that carries with it the potential of annihilating his newly chosen ascetical and Christian path. Many can control vices, sins, and addictions for some weeks or months. Mastering those for the remainder of one's life is another matter entirely. And each and every addictive and sinful habit, once surrendered, leaves one with a loss of meaning that is rightly characterized by calling it the dark night of the senses. I had a friend once who needed to give up smoking, but she would say, "I can't give it up, they are my friends." And she feared what would happen if she lost her friends. She feared what we call the dark night of the senses, and there's also addiction issues going on there as well. Ignatius lived for 30 years with the wealth, the prestige, and the protection of the Loyola name. Along with addictions to gambling, he was sexually promiscuous, he possessed an explosive temper, and was conceited and touchy about his honor. According to some profiles, Ignatius was quite insecure. In his personal appearance and dress, he was vain and careful. Again, from the autobiography, self-described. Ignatius, like we have already stated, was not a likely candidate for sainthood. Anyone contemplating a lifetime of abstinence and asceticism could rightfully be paralyzed by fright at the prospect of overcoming this intense spiritual and psychological matrix of pride, passion, addiction, and sin. It is in light of this problematic history and his fragile yet maturing faith that Ignatius is tempted by, he says, a rather disturbing thought, which troubled him, representing the difficulty of the life that he had chosen and was leading. Ignatius sensed the voice of the enemy taunting him with fear and dread at the thought of suffering, he said, for 70 years. 70 years without the pleasures of his first 30. But he addresses it. He says, "You poor creature," this is to the temptation, "you poor creature, can you promise me even 1 hour of life?" And this kind of direct confrontation with the fear successfully overcomes the temptation, and then he goes back to being at peace. Hereon after, he experienced successive alterations between intense desolations and consolations that caused him awe. He says in the autobiography, "What kind of new life is this that we are now beginning?" In defiant rejection of this fearsome threat, Ignatius resolutely commits himself to surrendering his former life of sin. At this point, he consciously embraces a lifelong journey of self-mastery and ascetical practices. More significantly, he proclaims the truth that the temptations are mirages. They're kind of like black noise, the black noise of addictions and sinful habits and pleasures of his past that promise life, but cannot satisfy his authentic human nature. Awakened by grace, he speaks the truth out loud. The second conversion paradigm I call the truth paradigm, for Ignatius confronts the ancient lie that sin and addiction's promise of life, however it assaults us, is false. In his rules, Ignatius calls Satan the enemy of human nature. This title expands our understanding of sin and temptation's multi-pronged attack on the human person. The effects are manifest physiologically, psychologically, and spiritually. That is, through the entirety of one's human nature. And the life the tempter holds forth to the tempted is a lie, no matter whether promised benefits are physical, psychological, or spiritual. But as we described, there is a period of emptiness when sinful and addictive habits are surrendered. We give it the name the dark night of the senses. So you discern in light of this dark night of surrendering addictive and sinful habits, not based on your fear, but on the truth that sinful and addictive habits cannot bring life. So be not afraid, and do not act on fear, even in the face of surrendering those supposed friends who can't offer joy or happiness or health or eternal life. And I hope that helps.